Sure that CCN clip ready. We need it for the second.
4.
Facts from the Clarendon correspondent coming through now.
3.
All the international stories in the folder. Good to
2.
Newsreaders all set.
Yeah, man, everything set, everything ready.
1.
From the Grill to Morant Point, News Talk 93 FM has got it covered. Across the 7 seas to the 4 corners of the world, it's all captured on the 93 radar, 93.1, 93.3, 93.5, 93.7 and 93.9 on your FM dial. Real News at 5 starts now.
Afternoon, time for the 5 o'clock news roundup here on News Talk 93 FM. I'm Errol Lee.
And I'm Andre Bernard.
Coming up in this newscast, sitting of Parliament suspended due to flaring tempers while discussing crime.
National Security Minister Peter Bunting says the Jamaica Labour Party is playing political football with crime.
Executive Director of National Integrity Action, Professor Trevor Monroe, welcomes news that audit of health facilities will be released.
And the government working on new law to improve efficiency and transparency in its procurement activities.
Now the details. Speaker of the House Michael Peart was this afternoon forced to suspend the sitting of the House after unruly members descended into a shouting match during discussions on the rise in crime. It intensified after the opposition leader Andrew Holness called the National Security Minister Peter Bunting rude, bright and out of order. Bunting had used a ministerial statement to denounce Holness's pronouncement at a political rally that people were more likely to die if the People's National Party is in power. As the minister sought to reply to the opposition leader, he appealed to Holness to calm down. Members of the opposition were displeased and disrupted Parliament with more shouting. The Speaker warned that he would suspend the sitting if the members continued to display poor behavior, but they did not yield. This forced the Speaker to suspend the sitting for 15 minutes and summon the leaders of government and opposition business to his office. On the resumption, Peart described the incident as unfortunate and ruled that he would not allow any further statements, only questions.
Meanwhile, Minister of National Security Peter Bunting has claimed that the opposition is playing political football with crime. Speaking at the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, Technical Working Group on Preventing Crime this morning, Bunting said progress being made in crime-fighting efforts are hampered by the fact that crime is pulled into the political arena and treated like a political football. He says the politicization of crime makes it more challenging to unite stakeholders to tackle the issues in a sustainable way. Opposition leader Andrew Holness last week asserted that murders are more rampant under the People's National Party, the PNP. Speaking at a mass rally in Hopewell, Hanover, Holness told party supporters that murders had risen from where the JLP had left it in 2011. However, Bunting has decried the fact that crime is being used to score political points. He has also called for more partnerships to be forged in tackling crime.
Meanwhile, the People's National Party, PNP, is taking the opposition leader Andrew Holness to task for what it says are his irresponsible statements in relation to the country's crime problem. While speaking at a JLP rally last week, Holness suggested that if Jamaicans wanted to be assured of their lives, they should not re-elect the PNP. He also made his often repeated argument that murder figures tend to dip whenever the JLP is in power. However, the PNP has hit back, calling the statements by Holness baseless and ridiculous. The PNP says with crime such a serious problem with deep sociological roots, it demands a sober and analytical response. The party says that response should be bipartisan instead of being the subject of talk on political platforms. The PNP says the assertions by Holness are not true, as there were 1,682 reported murders in 2009 when the JLP was in office. It says that figure is still the highest reported in 1 year, while the country's lowest murder figure in 10 years was recorded last year, when 1,005 homicides were committed. But the opposition leader, Andrew Holness, is appealing to uncommitted voters to give their support to the JLP in the next general election. Speaking in Maypen Sunday night, Holness made his appeal to those who feel that the government cannot work for them and will not make a difference in their lives.
Executive Director of the National Integrity Action, Professor Trevor Monroe, has welcomed news that the Health Minister will be releasing the report of the audit of health facilities. Professor Monroe says he hopes that the full report will be released and not an amended version. He says the about turn by the Health Minister may have come because of the public pressure from all sectors of the society. Professor Monroe says it is important that Jamaicans continue to demand transparency and accountability from public officials. He says improvements in Jamaica's governance arrangements will serve to enhance transparency and accountability.
The government says it is working to ensure that the implementation of the Public Procurement Law, PPL, will improve efficiency and transparency in how procurement activities are undertaken in Jamaica. Senior Director of the Procurement and Asset Policy Unit, Cecile Mirage, says the recently passed PPL, which is expected to be put into operation next year, will advance the country's procurement landscape. The 2003 World Bank assessment of the country's procurement processes identified areas that need improvement. Mrs. Mirage says that in keeping with global standards, Jamaica has decentralized its procurement functions from the Central Supplies Division. She says each procuring entity is now obliged to follow the government's procurement guidelines.
Community tourism consultant Diana McIntyre Pike has created Village as Businesses program in the Caribbean to promote heritage and environmental tourism.
Community tourism is our brand name. We have the Countrystyle Community Tourism Network, and we have developed a program called Villages as Businesses. And this is an exciting program. It has been recognized worldwide. We got the Top World Award in Responsible Tourism in 2008. This initiative, tied with TUI, which is the largest tour operator in the world. And what this is all about is to show and empower communities how to run their community as a business.
She explains what community tourism is all about in terms of resources and personnel. She also speaks to the establishment of a tourism academy.
How you do that?
Identify business opportunities that we would then have interaction with even visitors wanting to see what it is that they have and what they can do to help them. It's a natural approach to having communities develop themselves with their natural resources, things that they take for granted. So it involves research, auditing what they have. And, it's great to see the mindset change. And we have now set up the Academy for Community Tourism, which will be based in Mandeville, but it's for the world as well. We can go anywhere. It's interactive.
The tourism consultant and trainer says so far the business program has incorporated several countries regionally and internationally.
So we're working with the Eastern Caribbean, Trinidad, St. Eustatius, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, to name a few. And we've had study tours coming in from South Africa and United States to see what we do with the village program that we have.
Voice there of community tourism consultant and trainer Diana McIntyre Pike. She was speaking this morning on Fresh Start with hosts Dr. Imani Tafari Ama and Kimberly Whitaker.
The Transport Operators Development Sustainable Services, TODS, in association with the Jamaica Association of Transport Owners and Operators, JATU, will officially launch its Road Safety Awareness campaign on Thursday, November 5. The campaign is the second in a series of 21-day road safety awareness campaigns and will be launched in St. Catherine. Todd says with a high number of fatalities, now just over 300 since the start of the year, the objective of the campaign is to increase the awareness of the motoring and commuting public on the importance of road safety and safe travel to promote healthy lifestyle and the establishment of the St. Catherine Road Safety Advisory Team. The launch of the campaign is scheduled to take place on the Old Harbour Road in the vicinity of the Innswood High School starting at 10 a.m. Some 16 major events are expected to be held across the parish over the next 21 days.
The chairman of the boards of the regional health authorities have released a joint statement expressing confidence in the Minister of Health, Dr. Fenton Ferguson, as well as in the doctors and health workers at the public hospitals. The chairmen say despite the challenges faced by the health sector from time to time, the doctors have been working tirelessly to deliver quality health care to their patients. The boards of the regional health authorities say they take note that over the past few days, there has been what they call unwarranted attacks in the media on the minister. They say they recognize that occurrences of bacterial outbreaks are not uncommon in any hospital internationally or locally. The health boards say the deaths are as painful to them as they are to the families, especially that of promising infants. They say they feel compelled to remind the public that the World Health Organization, the WHO, states that worldwide, the main causes of newborn deaths are prematurity and low birth weight, infections, lack of oxygen at birth, and birth trauma.
You're listening to news on News Talk 93 FM. It's 10.5 minutes after 5. Medical doctor and family physician Dr. Garth Rattray says the "not babies in a real sense" comment made by Dr. Fenton Ferguson in Parliament last Tuesday should cause him to resign as Minister of Health.
I didn't criticize the handling of the situation, because we're frank with you, nobody should blame the minister directly for that. What he said when he announced that these premature children were not babies in a real sense, that alone is enough for him to step aside. Imagine he's a Minister of Health, like a CEO for a company. For instance, there's a CEO for, let's say, where they make red stripe beer. It's not real beer because it's just made. They asked to resign immediately. I think it's only fair that having said such an egregious statement, he should resign, because we need to look to the Minister of Health for authority on the subject of health and also for leadership in crisis, which we have seen last year with the...
He says calls for the minister's resignation has to do with politics, where parties want to win elections at all cost.
Politics. That's why I'm not a fan of politics. In another sphere of society, you'd have to go. But because of politics, they need to win elections. Politics in and of itself is a creature. It needs to be fed, it needs to be kept alive. So if somebody is in a party has to win, I would want to put in brackets almost at all costs. So if it were a matter of ethics, he would have to resign. If it were a matter of efficiency, he would have to resign. But because politics involved in it, where the party, which it's just the way politics is. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, it's just that it's not a good thing. People really need to look at the bigger picture. And if you're going to use politics to dictate your ethics and your morals, then we're in serious.
Dr. Rattray says deaths among neonatal babies is not a shock to medical personnel, because situations like these are expected to happen.
It might sound bad to say this, but it is not a shock to anybody. And that's why probably he wasn't alerted, because it's expected to happen now and again. And then a place where it becomes a public threat, or a very new and strange organism, or a great amount of children dying. Otherwise, they really wouldn't involve the minister. That wasn't my beef with him. What he said.
He explains that such high risks entail regarding the lives of the newborn premature babies.
Bacteria. It is not uncommon for this to happen. It's very sad. It's horrible. It's terrible, but that's why I'm not blaming the minister, but even the best centers, bacteria, did you notice the fact that might surprise everybody to hear this? If we have, let's say, 10 trillion cells in our bodies, we have 10 to 1 things living on us at our organism, bacteria and viruses. They're outnumbered 10 to 1 in each of our bodies. So they are there, you can't get rid of them. So even if you do the best technique for sterilization, you can't truly sterilize an entire room. You can reduce the bacteria.
Medical doctor and family physician Dr. Garth Rattray speaking on Fresh Start this morning.
Meanwhile, chairman of the board of the University Hospital of the West Indies, the UHWI, Sterling Suarez, has announced that Senior Director of Finance at the hospital, Kevin Allen, has been appointed to act as Chief Executive Officer following the resignation of Dr. Cecil White. According to a release from the UHWI last night, White's resignation was to have taken effect at the end of January 2016. However, Suarez says the board felt that it was in the hospital's best interest to appoint someone to act immediately. The release adds that the board has also decided to appoint Dr. Carl Bruce, consultant neurosurgeon, to act as Senior Director of Clinical Services in the wake of the resignation of Professor Trevor McCartney. Meanwhile, yesterday, Suarez said that considerable progress has been made in implementing the recommendations of the Pan American Health Organization PAHO team, aimed at helping to ensure no further outbreaks of bacteria at the hospital. He also noted that there have been no further reported cases of bacterial infection at the hospital.
A police sergeant today gave evidence before the West Kingston Commission of Inquiry that appears to contradict the testimony of a police ground commander for the May 2010 operation in Tivoli Gardens. Sergeant Steve Waugh testified that prior to the start of the operation on May 24, 2010, he was never informed that his duty was to retrieve persons killed or injured and transport them to the Kingston Public Hospital. However, Waugh said once the operation got underway, he was one of the designated drivers who transported police and military personnel and the bodies of at least 12 persons that were collected throughout the West Kingston community. when he was asked by attorney-at-law Gillian Burgess, who is representing the Office of the Public Defender, if an armored ambulance was a part of his contingent, Waugh said no. Seeking to explain the JCF's efforts to remove injured and deceased persons from the area of operation, Assistant Commissioner Donovan Graham had testified earlier this year that there were teams with 2 units from the Mobile Reserve that were given this task, and that these teams were headed by Waugh.
Members of the island security forces have seized a total of 13 guns over the last week under the Get the Guns campaign. The police high command says the guns were seized during a series of operations across the island. The latest find has pushed to 95 the total number of weapons recovered under the initiative that was officially launched at the Office of the Commissioner of Police on Thursday, September 17. The campaign, which was first announced in July this year, is geared towards significantly reducing the number of illegal guns and ammunition in Jamaica. It involves, among other things, intercepting illegal guns entering the island's shores and seizing them from criminals.
Members of the legal profession and the judiciary turned out in large numbers this morning to honor outgoing President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Seymour Panton. Justice Panton was recognized for his outstanding contribution to the justice system. Acting President Justice Dennis Morrison said Panton served with dedication. In her remarks, Chief Justice Zayla McCalla commended Panton for his 50 years of service to the nation and his stewardship as President of the Court of Appeal. Attorney General Patrick Atkinson thanked him for his service and mentioned that the inroads he made into the backlog of cases in his court was remarkable, and the nation was grateful and thankful. And that's local news. For international news, we join the BBC.
BBC News with Nick Qureshi. Officials in Taiwan say its president will meet the Chinese President Xi Jinping in Singapore on Saturday. It will be the first time the two leaders have ever met. A spokesman for the Taiwanese president, Ma Ying-jeou, said the aim was to promote peace across the Taiwan Strait. The president of Myanmar, Thein Sein, has warned his people against voting for the opposition party of Aung San Suu Kyi in elections next week. Mr. Thein said swift political reform could lead to the anarchy experienced after the Arab Spring uprisings. Ms. Suu Kyi's party is expected to win the most seats. The German car manufacturer Volkswagen says an internal investigation launched following its emissions scandal found that 800,000 more vehicles showed what it called inconsistencies. VW put an initial estimate of the cost of this discovery at about €2 billion. US safety regulators have imposed a large fine on the Japanese airbag manufacturer Takata. It's accused of using an ingredient blamed for causing some airbags to explode. The problem has been linked to 7 deaths. The man who organised the 2014 Football World Cup in Brazil, José Maria Marin, has been extradited from Switzerland to the United States to face corruption charges. He pleaded not guilty in court in New York to bribery allegations. Amazon, the world's largest online retailer, has opened its first physical bookshop 2 decades after it began selling books on the internet. The shop is located in the company's home city of Seattle in the US, and books are selected according to customer ratings. And one of the most popular tourist attractions in Rome, the Trevi Fountain, has reopened after renovations that cost more than $2 million. The work was partly funded by the Italian fashion house Fendi. Many tourists follow a tradition of throwing a coin in the fountain, which supposedly ensures a return to the city. BBC News.
Broadcast Jamaican and Newscast 93 FM now gear the news in the Jamaican language.
Good evening. My name is Kadeen Marshall, and this are the news in the Jamaican language. Arlene Arson, who is the public defender, said her office is going to start interview people who were involved in the dead baby scandal Friday come. The public defender are looking over cause the 19 baby were born before them time for dead from the disease that broke out at the Huey and Cornwall Regional Hospital. She said Dr. Cecil White and Professor Trevor McCarthy were left the work of Huey over the scandal at the first 2 smarty them and office are going to ask some question. Them are going to ask Sterling Suarez, where the Huey board chairman, some question next week, cause him to give them some paper before that. On top of that, RSA Henry say our office no ask nobody else to come in and answer some question. The police found 13 guns last week in the Get the Gun campaign. According to the police high command, them find the gun them in some operation across the island. This make them find 95 guns so far since them start the campaign in July last year. Under the campaign, the police are trying to stop illegal gun from coming out of the country and take what the gun them where the criminal them have. The People National Party accused over what opposition leader Andrew Holness said, but if Jamaican people want to stay alive, them not for vote for PMP. Holness said the murder rate always drop when the JLP around the country too. But the PMP has said what Holness said no make sense because enough things cause crime in the country. And in 2009, when the JLP been around the country, 1,682 murder been gone. The PMP said that had the highest murder figure for 1 year and the country lowest murder figure in a 10-year gone last year when 1,005 people dead in the country. Dancehall artist Elephant Man court case never get for start today in the Home Circuit Court. This one cause one next court case being go on same time, so him get one new trial date for February 8, 2016. Him get longer time for stay yard. Elephant Man real name O'Neil Bryan being get charged for rape from something we go on in January 2012 with one woman on Hillcrest Avenue yard in St. Andrew. News from foreign. Volkswagen said them find some wrongdoing with the carbon dioxide emission level what could have caused problem for 800,000 cars in Europe. VW said the problem could have cost them €2 billion. Some of the brand car them might have the problem are VW, Audi, Skoda, and Seat. The problem are bother the diesel car them, but other car where you'd use other gas might have the problem too. Me name Kadeen Marshall, and that's all the news in the Jamaican language.
Broadcast Jamaican and Newstar 93 FM just gave the news in the Jamaican language.
The 5 o'clock Sports Roundup is brought to you by Newstalk 93 FM, life-changing radio.
Good afternoon. With your 5 o'clock sports roundup here on Newstalk 93 FM, I am Mikhail Drama Johns and we begin with football. Kingston College today conceded a second-half goal versus Haile Selassie in their Isaflow Manning Cup quarter-final to see the scores end 5-1. KSC had made their 5 nettings in the first half. Meanwhile, the day's other game saw St. George's beating St. Jago 3-0. And for action in the Registrar Premier League last night, it ended in a 2-all stalemate between table toppers Montego Bay United MBU and title holders Arnett Gardens. With the point, MBU advanced to 18 points at the top, 3 over Portmore United in second, and third place Humble Lion also have 15 points after having beaten Cavalier SC 1-0 on Sunday. Also happening last evening were the semi-finals of the Western Sports-sponsored Business House five-a-side competition. Making their way into the Division 1 finals are Spanish Grain Stores and Urban Development Corporation UDC. Spanish Grain Store thrashed Scotiabank Group A 5-0, while it was close in the other game where UDC clipped Scotiabank Group B 1-0. In D2, Peak Bottling Company got by Connex 3-1 and will clash with Restaurant of Jamaica, who served Tasty a 2-0 defeat. The finals will be played on a Saturday, along with the finals of the knockout competition where Fontana Pharmacy will meet McKay Security. Further afield, today's Champions League action saw Real Madrid beating Paris Saint-Germain 1-0, while their Madrid counterparts Atletico dropped points with a 0-all stalemate versus FC Astana. English Premier League EPL side Manchester City won versus Sevilla, the score being 3-1, while their Manchester counterparts United got a late goal to clip CSKA Moscow 1-0. The biggest win of the day went to Shakhtar Donetsk, who thrashed Malmo 4-0. Benfica got by Galatasaray 2-1,
and Borussia Mönchengladbach ended a 1-1 with Italian side Juventus. And moving on to cricket, West Indies captain Jason Holder has received a one-match suspension for maintaining a slow over rate during the first one-day international ODI against Sri Lanka on Sunday. Holder was also fined 40% of his match fees, while his teammates were docked 20% of theirs. Meanwhile, Marlon Samuels will take over in his stead when they play Game 2 tomorrow. The first game, as mentioned before, played on Sunday, saw the regional side suffering a one-wicket defeat. And the third test between England and Pakistan has seen Pakistan make a turnaround on day 3. Pakistan now have 146 runs for 3 from 53 overs, starting the day in the field with the touring Englishmen on 222 runs for the loss of 4 wickets. Pakistan took the remaining 6 wickets for 82 runs. England therefore ended on 306. Scores now see Pakistan with a 74-run lead, with opener Mohammad Hafiz leading the charge with an unbeaten 97 runs. And Shoaib Malik has announced that the current test between his side and England will be his last. In a shock statement at the close of today's third day of play, an emotional Malik said that the time was right to move on, only 3 matches after his 5-year exile from the test team had come to an end. He says the team has some good youngsters and it is now a good time to retire, adding that family comes first and he wants to focus on the 2019 World Cup. Malik made a dramatic return to the fray in the first test at Abu Dhabi last month. He was called in to the team as a late replacement for the injured Azhar Ali and made a career-best 245 runs in his first appearance since the Edgbaston test against England in 2010. However, his scores have fallen away since that innings, with the scores of a duck, 2, 7, 38 and another duck in his next 5 innings, the latest duck coming today. And that's it for the 5 o'clock sports roundup here on Newstalk 93 FM. I am Mikhail Drama Johns saying stay tuned for the business news and weather report.
The 5 o'clock sports roundup was brought to you by Newstalk 93 FM, life-changing sports radio.
At 5:28, time for business news. On the local stock market today, the index advanced by 500.20 to close at 132,690.16. The junior market index advanced by 48.59 to close at 1,396.36. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 34 stocks, of which 23 advanced, 8 declined, and 3 traded firm. Market volume amounted to 7.9 million units, valued at over $68.4 million. General Accident Insurance was the volume leader. Stocks advancing today: Cargo Handlers, Carib Cement, Caribbean Cream, Caribbean Flavors, Derrimon Trading, Gleaner, Grace, Brawlers, Producers Group, Stock Exchange, JMMB Group, Kingston Wharves, Knutsford Express, Lasco Distributors, Lasco Financial, Lasco Manufacturing, Mayberry Investments, Panjam Investment, Pulse Investments, Radio Jamaica, Sagicor Group, Scotia Group, and Supreme Ventures. Stocks declining: Berger, Carib Producers, Consolidated Bakeries, General Accident, Lime, NCB, Sagicor Real Estate, X-Fund, and Scotia Investments. On the foreign exchange market, the U.S. dollar closed at $119.81. The pound sterling, $184.60. The Canadian dollar at $91.50, and the euro at $131.70. That's business news.
And now for a look at the weather. There is a tropical wave to the east of Jamaica and a broad trough over the central Caribbean. The tropical wave over the central and eastern Caribbean moves across the island late tomorrow through to early Thursday. In the forecast for tonight, expect isolated showers.
To end the news, the main points. Tempers flare in Parliament, forcing the Speaker to suspend the sitting.
National Security Minister Peter Bunting says the JLP is playing political football with crime.
Executive Director of the National Integrity Action, Professor Trevor Monroe, welcomes news that the audit of the health facilities will be released.
And government working on new law to improve efficiency and transparency in its procurement activities.
That's your 5 o'clock news roundup here on News Talk 93 FM. I'm Errol Lee. 93 FM, I'm Errol Lee. 93 FM, I'm Errol Lee. 93 FM, I'm Errol